Welcome everybody, I'm Killzone. So, when it came to the Puppet Master crossover, this was a little different than how I handled the other crossovers. So, for me, the way that I go about doing these crossovers is that I have a general idea of what I want to do, right? I have a general idea of, like, for instance, I had an idea for what I want to do for the Syndicate crossover. I had an idea for it, had a general idea, and I went for it. Right, I script wrote all the way up until I was able to get to the Syndicate crossover, but I had an idea for what I wanted in the Syndicate crossover, and I had an idea for what kind of characters, they would be and what they would look like. I had a general idea, and I wrote the scripts to get to that point. Same with Warzone. I had an idea that I wanted to introduce like an edgy-looking character that, gave off those commando vibes, and I wanted him to act a certain way, be a certain way, and so I wrote the scripts that I had to get to that point. I always had the intention also to do a tournament. I always have loved the idea of tournaments where you get to see different characters fighting each other or whatever, and see how they fare against each other and what would happen. So I wrote the scripts to get to that point. Obviously interweaving, all the stories to be together, always having a purpose. Now, the reason why I bring all this up is I even have an idea of how I want to end the Kill Saga. I have an idea of how I want to end the series, and I'm script writing all the way up until that point as well. I have an idea for that. However, the Puppet Master, besides the first crossover I ever did, the Puppet Master is the first crossover that I had no idea how it was going to fit into things. But I made it fit. Now, what I mean by this is that originally the Puppet Master was never going to exist. It was never going to exist, and the point of this Puppet Master crossover was, of course, not to fight someone like the Puppet Master. Originally, the idea of this crossover was to basically try to bring Kill and Kessler back to trying to be friends again. Because obviously, ever since the events of Kill Saga X Killer Ted Saran, obviously their friendship has been on the rocks. Their friendship is not the same. And so, after the tournament, you can tell even during the tournament, like, Kill still doesn't trust Kessler, he doesn't, like, fully want to be around him, he doesn't want to even give him his upgrades, which his upgrades would give him a strategical and tactical advantage in their fights, which would help Kill's overall goal. He still doesn't want to give him the upgrades because he doesn't trust him. And throughout the crossover, he has to come to terms with the fact that he has to trust Kessler on some level in order for them to win the tournament. Starts getting into the point of Kill having to come to terms with trusting Kessler, but doesn't get him to fully trust Kessler. So what I wanted to do was make a crossover where they would be put into a situation where Kill would have to trust Kessler with his life and vice versa. That way they can come together and be friends again, leading into the eventual finale of the series. Well, this crossover eventually became that. My original idea for what I wanted this crossover to be was basically just some bunch of villains that were no names would attack the original three, and the original three would be away. Like, this would be a crossover that would take away from all the extra characters that have ever been introduced. So we would only have the original three. Ted and Nuke and Vope would eventually come in, so we have the original five. And it would take away from the new members, like Pillowy and Spider-Ball. They would not be in this crossover. They would not have the Syndicate members that eventually joined the Ultimates. Those would not be in it. It would just be the original five, back to basics. And for whatever reason, those guys would be gone, doing their own thing. The original five would have to stand against these enemies, and eventually come down to the original three. And those three would have to stand together to do what they have to, and, try to survive. This eventually became the Puppet Master crossover. Now, I've always been intrigued by the idea of, puppets and whatever, and, like, those kinds of stop-motion videos or whatever, right? When I was younger, I used to actually do stop-motion videos. And that was what I used to do with, like, Legos and shit. So I've always been intrigued by the idea of stop-motion and, puppets and, Legos and stuff like that. So eventually I was able to find a way to, get those kinds of, puppets/dolls made, and they came out really nice. And when it came down to the crossover, I wanted to give off a vibe of dread, like, oh shit, can these heroes make it out alive, Like, this is a situation that they've never caught themselves in. Like, you find out really quick, they can't transform back without the Puppet Master's gun. So you wonder, shit, how the hell do they get the gun? Second, you find out they can't operate it because they're puppets. You need human hands. So it's like, shit, they can't turn themselves back. Everyone else on the team is gone. What do? Then you also find out that Kill can't switch to his demon form, which is usually an get out of jail free card. But in this case, because he's a puppet, he can't transform into his demon form without possibly killing himself fully. And so he can't do that. So you have three really big scenarios going on, and you just keep wondering, how the fuck are they going to get out of this? How the fuck are they going to get out of this? And every single time you get a positive thing towards, them possibly winning, another negative comes in. And I wanted to give off the original, vibe that the original Killer Ted series gave off. Where the original Killer Ted 1 through, I believe it's 1 through 8, gave off this feeling of dread of, can Matt survive? Can Matt actually escape this dread? It gave off that original vibe. I wanted to give off that vibe for this crossover, which is exactly why Ted from, a different dimension shows up, and he has the same vibe as the original Ted did. Because obviously as time progressed, Ted started having more respect for Kill, Kessler, and Matt, and started becoming more of their frenemies rather than, their straight up enemies. And so I wanted to give off that vibe of the original Ted, which is why they fight him in, I believe, episode 4 of The Puppet Master. And I really liked it. I loved the idea of having to put Kill, Kessler, and Matt also in this situation where they really had to rely on each other in order to survive what was going on. And at the beginning of the crossover, you see that Kill obviously cares for Matt and Kessler because he says when they disappear, he has no idea where they are or what happened to them because the Puppet Master zapped them into puppets. He doesn't know where they are. He screams, "Where are they?" Not "Where is Matt?" He screams, "Where are they?" Indicating he cares for both of them. They all get turned into puppets, and they all have to rely on each other. They all start hiding together. Kill's protecting Kessler and Matt, and this goes into full effect in episode 4, where a lot of things are happening to Kessler, and Kill has to come in and protect him a lot. And also Matt has to protect him, but you get my point. So, for instance, at one point, Kessler gets captured by Ted. He gets put into this jar. He can't escape. He's losing the ability to breathe. And what ends up happening is Kill screams, "Let him go." Ted tackles him. Kill goes toe to toe with Ted and starts fighting him. And he starts fighting. Eventually, what ends up happening is at one point Kessler gets tackled by Ted later on in the fight. Kill says get off of him and tackles him, showing that he does care. And over the crossover, you start to see more and more that Kill is softening up to Kessler. And at the end of the crossover, they are a lot closer than they were prior to the crossover, because obviously it was more like, I'll trust you only because I have to a little bit in this scenario. But now he's, more protective. He's protecting him like a friend. And there's still work that has to be done to fully bring that friendship at least somewhat back to what it used to be. And there's going to be some episodes that follow the Puppet Master that deal with Kill and Kessler's relationship. Whether or not that, leads into them becoming best friends again or not, we'll see. But there are episodes that take place after Puppet Master that will deal with their relationship and will talk about where that, leaves them, where that's going to take them. And that will eventually lead into the finale. Now, how was it filming this crossover, right? Ooh, man. This crossover, honest to God, was fun as shit to film. There was so many different things to it, although it was hard. It was really hard to film because the way that these dolls or puppets, whatever you want to call them, are made, they were custom made. The way they were custom made, they're very stiff in some parts. Now, while that is good for when they need to stand up, that is very good for when they need to stand up on their own, it's not so good when you have to do action fights and shit like that. So, it became a little hard to do certain scenes with these puppets, and I learned that really quick that these puppets were not going to be as easy to film as I thought. And so, this crossover, which should have taken only 5 days to film, ended up taking about an entire 2 weeks to film. Which I have no issue with, but it just took a little bit longer than usual to film this crossover, which, it is what it is. Honestly, I love the Puppet Master's design. It's very minimal. It gives off this very creepy vibe, especially with the music being in the background. and I really liked it. Now, the reason as to why I had these surprise cameos in this crossover, I'll go through each and every single one of them one by one. For instance, the first one is Carlos. Now, Carlos, this is his first official series debut. What do I mean? Carlos has only ever shown up in the comedy skits. He has never shown up in an official video of the OG series. Now, don't get me wrong, the comedy skits are part of the series. You know, they are part of the Kill Saga, Killer Ted. They are part of that playlist for a reason. They are part of that series. But there's something different about the comedy skits and how they act versus the Kill Saga episodes and the Killer Ted episodes. You know what I mean? This is the first time Carlos ever shows up in one of them. And I wanted this to be like a huge surprise because obviously prior to this crossover, Techie and everyone else has to scatter around to go save other individuals. Like, for instance, they have to go save Grandmaster, Techie, and Commando, so everyone leaves. So you wonder, okay, if the gun needs to be held by, human hands, who's going to hold it? Obviously, Carlos being the huge surprise that no one was expecting. Bam, there you go. And it was really nice to bring Carlos into the series and be the almost unsung hero of the story. Similar to like how he's sort of like the rat from Avengers Endgame, where if it wasn't for the rat saving Ant-Man from the van, the heroes probably would have never been able to stop Thanos in the end. That's kind of what he is for this crossover. Whereas, like, everyone will probably give Demon Kill the credit because he went toe-to-toe with Puppet Master in the end and killed him. Carlos is the unsung hero of this crossover, and because of him, the heroes were saved. So I really did like bringing Carlos into this, because I didn't feel like having one episode where Techie's like, yeah, I gotta be protected or whatever from these assassins, let me come in and save you guys, and leave Commando out to possibly die. I didn't like the idea of doing something like that, so the idea of bringing the idea of bringing Carlos into this crossover really was nice for me. I really did like that. The next cameo was Jigsaw. Now, Jigsaw, obviously there's a few characters in this crossover that I'm going to talk about right now that were collabs with other creators. Those creators helped me to do these scenes. And you might be asking, why was Jigsaw in this crossover? Because he's a puppet. And since I love the idea of puppets, like I've loved the idea of, like, the Muppets, for instance, or those videos where they show Elma going off and going crazy. I've always loved the idea of those characters, so I wanted to bring those characters into this crossover one way or another. And so I dedicated an entire episode to Jigsaw, which allowed for the original Ted to show up and go toe-to-toe with the team. And I love the idea of Jigsaw giving his whole, he has an entire episode dedicated to himself, allowing him and Ted to go toe-to-toe with the original three. And I loved that. I loved doing that. It was so much fun. I loved collabing with that creator. I also collabed with a couple others. So Kermit was in this, obviously, because if you're gonna have a puppet themed episode and you're gonna involve other puppets, I would think you would have to try to involve Kermit and Elmo somehow, because those are the main puppets everyone thinks about. And so I got them too. Kermit was real nice to have as like a little comedy thing. Elmo was just, he was there. I wish that the Elmo one came out a little differently, but it was still nice to have Elmo there. I did enjoy that. Then this is before we get to the next puppet, we're gonna talk about Cookie Monster, because I forgot about that one for a sec. I loved the addition of adding Cookie Monster into this. It was so much fun to have Cookie Monster be the one that takes down Jigsaw as a little comedy skit after this horrifying episode where you don't know if the heroes are gonna get out alive. At the very end, to end on the comedy thing where Cookie Monster comes in and kills Jigsaw, it's like, okay, alright, I dig that. It was kind of fun to do that. Then after that, we go into, part 5. I obviously talked about Kermit and Elmo already. I loved adding those two. Then we get into the impersonations guy. That's actually my cousin, Johnny. He's the live-action scene you have of that. And originally, Johnny was never going to be part of this crossover at all. Johnny's my cousin, love him to death. But he was originally never going to be part of this crossover. No intentions to ever add him. But when I went down to see him, Keep in mind, I'm making this episode for the documentary back in May 20th. So I ended up shooting the entire Puppet Master series the first 2 weeks of May. That's how early in advance we're doing these episodes. So I saw my cousin, about a week ago. So like May 13th. And he just started doing these impersonations in the car when I was hanging out with him. And I loved them so much. So I ended up recording a good chunk of them, and I ended up making it into the Puppet Master. The reason why I did it? One, it was just really funny, and part 5 is really the main jokey comedy video of the entire series of Puppet Master. Part 5 is literally like just the bust out laughing kind of thing. At least that's what it's intended to be. So, obviously I was going to add him in it. It was really funny. I enjoyed it. So I added him into it, and I love him being in it. Honestly, that's my favorite part of episode 5. Easy. And then the last crossover, Frederick the Yeti, was kind of a last laugh kind of thing. I really enjoyed doing that. It was kind of like him just singing opera, and everyone was just like, what the fuck? Everyone just stopped fighting, and it was really funny. But then part 6. Part 6 is the big... Besides part 1 and part 2 being the big what the fuck, like every episode I feel like has a what the fuck moment, because part 1, everyone gets turned into puppets, what the fuck. Part 2, Carlos shows up, what the fuck. Part 3, Jigsaw shows up at the end of the episode, what the fuck. Part 4, they're in a Jigsaw world, and they have to go toe-to-toe with the original version of Ted, what the fuck. Part 5, all these puppets show up, and whatnot, and they start making comedy jokes with the team. What the fuck? Part 6. This is the biggest what the fuck moment I would have to say. Demon Kill versus the Puppet Master. Demon Kill during this entire crossover has only made one appearance. And that was, I believe, in episode 4. And what he showed up as was telling, the puppet version of Kill, I cannot transform forms with you because if I do, you will die permanently given the fact that you're in a puppet form. So he had not shown up at all during this entire crossover. And what ends up happening is, at the end of the crossover, Demon Kill shows up and says, I'm here to kick your fucking ass, Puppet Master. And you think, okay, this is going to be an easy thing. Puppet Master seems to have no powers other than, him having these really powerful weapons. Demon Kill can take him on pretty easy. Puppet Master shoots his gun, instantly knocks out Matt and Kessler, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But Demon Kill takes the brunt of the power, and he is in agony. He is in pain, and you're like, holy shit. Like, this guy's actually giving Demon Kill a hard time. And this is only ever the second character to ever give Demon Kill a hard time. There's only been 2 in the entire series up until this point that given Demon Kill a hard time. That is Saran and Puppet Master. And Puppet Master obviously didn't hold his own to Demon Kill as much as, Saran did. But Puppet Master definitely held his own against Demon Kill and actually hurt him pretty bad, as you saw, because he starts wiping away the blood from his nose, because the blast, you find out the blast is, rearranging your molecules. So Demon Kill, while trying to kill Puppet Master, is literally fighting his body to not rearrange its own molecules because that's the blast that he's taking. And this shows a huge increase in power in terms of durability for Demon Kill, because never have we been able to see what happens if Demon Kill fights basically someone who can rearrange molecules. And we see that Demon Kill is strong enough and capable enough to keep and hold his own against someone who can do that and prevent them from rearranging his molecules. It's painful as fuck, but he's able to do it. And in the end, he ends up taking down and killing the Puppet Master. And, after that, everyone leaves and goes their separate ways, and they have to go and help out the rest, like Tekken Commando, to go and protect them if they can. That leads into the following episodes. What did I think of this crossover? I really loved it. It's definitely really fun to film. I really enjoyed it. What I am most excited to see, honestly, is everyone's reactions to it, because obviously since this is being filmed May 20th, this is not releasing. The entire crossover will fully be released from October 16th to October 31st. So I'm not gonna see people's reactions to this crossover for another 5 months. Keep in mind the time frame of when this crossover was filmed, because keep in mind at this point the Saran crossover just finished, uploading. The tournament is already filmed, right? The tournament's already filmed. It's already being filmed. I haven't seen people's reactions to the tournament yet. but Puppet Master's already finished filming. So, yeah, so talk about filming these things really early in advance. But, yeah, so I'm really excited to see people's reactions to it. Obviously, I'm not going to see them by the time this documentary is done filming, but I'm really curious to see what people's reactions are to the Puppet Master. Because, obviously, I love people's reactions to everything. For instance, I saw people's reactions to the Saran crossover, and I loved it with a passion, how people were reacting to the Saran crossover. It was great. People were like, holy shit, like, Saran is fucking beast. But I loved doing the Saran crossover, loved doing the tournament, and loved doing the Puppet Master. And this crossover, the Puppet Master, will lead into extra episodes and comedy skits that take place after this, which will eventually lead to the finale of the Kill Saga. So I hope you guys are ready for that, because godly, let me tell you, that finale, I've already script wrote the finale. I'm script writing the episodes that lead up to the finale right now. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, there's about 9 to 10 episodes, if we're counting comedy skits, that lead up to the finale, and a couple more, I think, that I'm probably going to add in. So it might be like about 8 to 12 episodes, I'll say, that'll lead up to the finale of the Kill Saga. And let me tell you, the finale, we're not holding punches on that one. I can't wait for you guys to see that. So with that, guys, been as well, to close. I'm Killzone, and I'm out for now. Peace.